Hello all, and this very, very late video. Yes, because we had SummerSlam, we had SummerSlam, but we had Survivor Series, didn't talk about it. Had Punk, didn't talk about it. Had Austin and Vince, didn't talk about it. And we got so much stuff this weekend, it's not even funny that I probably need to talk about it. So, finally had a chance to come on here and talk a little bit about stuff. So I thought I would come on here and try to just do a big long video about a whole mess of stuff. And yeah, so let's do that. So anyways, let's start with Survivor Series. We'll talk about Punk after I talk about Survivor Series. We'll kind of try to go into a semblance of order here. Survivor Series wasn't very good. Well, I would say, to me, it wasn't good. Even with the main event, I thought the main event was great. I thought the main event angle was really good. I thought all of that was good stuff. And I didn't watch it live. I was actually at a company party when this was going on. I was keeping tabs on my phone, and I was hoping that when I got there, just if the party was kind of boring, I could, even though I had to be there, I could use my phone and watch the network if they had good Wi-Fi or something. But no, that was not the case. So anyways, I did watch it later, and even though I knew everything that happened, and I still thought the main event was great. I thought the stuff with Sting was, I don't know if I would say great, because there was stuff that just kind of bugged me about it, but it was really nitpicky stuff, so it wasn't anything that was like, oh, this made it horrible, but it was, it was what it was. But, you had the opening tag match was good, the Divas Survivor Series match, and I like Survivor Series matches, but my thing with Survivor Series matches, you have to give them time. And if you're not going to give them time, then there's no reason to have them, because really they need to be probably a minimum of 40 minutes. Well, I think if you did a really fast one, you could probably do 20 minutes, but really it needs to be about 40 minutes, a minimum, for the match to even be good. And, it really takes a long time for the match to develop and all that sort of stuff. So, that was not very good. I thought Bray Wyatt versus Dean Ambrose, even with the DQ, was good. I hope that the TLC match is much better. Adam Rose and the Bunny versus Slater Gator was just kind of there. Same thing with Nikki Bella versus AJ Lee, kind of just there. And like I said, the main event was great, and the debut of Sting was a big deal. And it was cool to see, I will not deny. And him and the little standoff between him and Triple H was kind of cool to see, and all of that. This did feel like a Raw, like a Sunday Night Raw. I do think they have to do something to make the pay-per-view seem less like Raws and more like they are events that you can't, not that you can't miss, but make them very different from Raw, since they're now all 3 hours. Either, they need to make that first hour that they just put on the network, they need to actually put matches on there and actually make it important, instead of just kind of a throwaway pre-show thing. But it needs to feel more like an event, and these shows don't feel like events. They just feel like, the Raw before the Raw, if you know what I mean. So, but there's not really much to really talk about that. Like I said, I thought the main event was great. It's unfortunate that apparently, after Dolph Ziggler busted his ass, he's not going to get any reward for it. But, it is kind of what it is. Then, of course, we had the Punk interview, which I'm sure that's what more people want to hear me talk about, though I think everybody and their brothers already talked about this. Kind of to say what a lot of other people say, when I heard it, I was like, this is really cool, not because he said anything that was really, except for the staph infection thing, that really shocked me that much. It was more of, well, we kind of thought this is what was going on, and then we really got the feeling of, okay, this is really what was going on. And so that was good. I think he said everything that was absolutely truthful? I think in his eyes he probably did. I would say factually, if you went through it with a fine-tooth comb, people have already have, and they've said, that he got some dates wrong, but they understood that, and probably got some other small things wrong. But overall, everything that came off, absolutely believable. It didn't sound like he was, just lashing out to hate on WWE for some reason. It sounded just like he wanted to get his side of everything and let people know really kind of what was going on in his head and what he felt was going on, which I think was great. And I think like I said, it told us, you know, we got confirmation on what many of us thought about Vince McMahon, on what many of us thought about Triple H, what many of us thought about a whole list of stuff. We definitely got, you know, clarification and kind of, okay, well, we were pretty sure that was what was going on. Now we kind of have confirmation that that was what's going on. So I think that extent, and I think to people who probably listen to it, who I would say are kind of hardcore casual fans, and that they're probably, you know, they're people who would find this, but they're not people who know every little bit about backstage and know all this and this and all that, know all that stuff. It was probably a little bit more eye-opening, and was probably all of that. And like I said, the staff infection stuff was just amazing, as was a lot of the this medical staff stuff. I think it was just absolutely stunning to hear, and hopefully we get some follow-up on that at the next stockholders conference. So hopefully, and of course, after that, after we heard all of that, after we heard all of the stuff about, you know, and if you haven't heard it, I would go listen to it. You know, he basically explained why he left, which was what everyone thought. It wasn't just one thing. It was, you know, he didn't want to face Triple H at WrestleMania. He didn't want to. He you know, he has this weird thing where he wants to main event, and by main event he means last guy on the show, get paid like a main eventer, the whole thing. You know, WWE tried to tell him that, well, you've main evented WrestleMania, and he was like, no, I haven't. I was, you know, the match with Undertaker, I was the 11th highest paid guy on the show. Well, then no, he didn't main event WrestleMania. You know, and that, and saying that, he even said he thought, you know, this was Daniel Bryan's year, and that it was stupid if Daniel Bryan wasn't going to main event WrestleMania. So I think that whole notion of that he was pissed that Daniel Bryan was taking his spot, I don't think that was true at all. I think it was just more of his frustration of not main eventing WrestleMania, and then on top of that, not getting paid for it and all that. And he talked about the pay. And of course, we heard, you know, even more stuff about the pay that we'd heard from Del Rio, which sounded really weird. And then Punk pretty much confirmed that, which was crazy. I mean, just also, I mean, again, if you haven't heard it, you need to go listen to it. You know, a lot of people made a lot about the fact that he got, you know, he was fired basically on his wedding day, which that doesn't surprise me that they would do. I will say that once you hear then Steve Austin and Vince McMahon thing, Vince McMahon, if you believe Vince McMahon, which I don't, but even if you kind of believed what he is, you would then have to put all the blame on Triple H himself, but we'll get into that in a second. So all of that went down. Of course, they did the second podcast. The second podcast wasn't quite as good. You know, like I said, they got like 10,000 questions and all sorts of other craziness. So they weren't. They said that the emails crashed or something like that, and it's probably just they didn't want to answer the emails because the emails were. I can only imagine the questions they got. I can only imagine what they got. So then we had, of course, which WWE Network had been building up for a while, even before this, was Vince McMahon being interviewed by Steve Austin, and of course, the big thing was, would they talk about Punk? And they did, and Steve Austin basically asked Vince McMahon, hey, you know, do you want to talk about Punk? And he said, yeah, I'll talk about Punk. And he basically really didn't. He just, you know, kind of gave a corporate answer, and then said he apologized for him getting, you know, fired on his wedding day, and then blamed it on somebody else, and basically blamed it on a legal department, even though, you know, pretty much everybody knew when he was getting married, so that was a bunch of BS anyways. But I've heard, you know, kind of different stuff from different people on this. A lot of people felt like, not that Steve Austin should have been, you know, like pressing him up, you know, just baiting at him, and it should have been, you know, like an attack type thing. But they felt he should have been a little stronger. Maybe so, but I think you have to remember that this is still the WWE Network. I'm sure there was kind of, even if there wasn't a told understanding, I'm sure there was an untold understanding that, you know, it had to be still within what the WWE would like, because I'm sure, you know, you didn't want to get on there and then, you know, Austin, you know, doing the interview and then, you know, basically get put on, well, now, no WWE guy can now go on Steve Austin's podcast. You don't want that. So I think he had to kind of juggle that. I think I definitely think he let it be known through his facial expressions what he thought was bullshit and what he didn't think was bullshit without calling it bullshit. So I was fine with that. I wasn't expecting a lot out of this. I didn't know how kind of scripted it would be or unscripted it would be. But he did answer a lot of stuff, and again, we got a lot more of, Vince McMahon trying to say that he was, not, out of touch, and proving that he probably was out of touch. I think when asked about Shane, his answer was just kind of amazing, to be honest, and I think does raise a lot of questions. In my opinion, but I have my own opinion. I know a lot of people. I've heard people say that, when Shane left, it really wasn't that big of a deal because, Shane's ideas were wacky and crazy, and I've often wondered if the reason why his ideas that he would come to Vince and people and say were wacky and crazy was because he thought the ideas that they were doing was wacky and crazy, so he wanted to run the company, so he thought the best way to do that was just come up with the craziest, wackiest ideas he could come up with, and then maybe he could get his foot in the door, and it didn't work out that way. But and not knowing where Shane, that Shane was working in China instead of Japan was a little odd. A lot of the stories, I think, all of the, Vince McMahon versus Steve Austin stuff went on. There was way too much that I could see touching on it. But there was way too much of that. I know some people were upset that he didn't follow up on the Randy Savage question. But I would say if Austin was in kind of that inner circle for a while. So if what is rumored to have happened, and Austin pretty much believes that's what happened, there's a good chance he wouldn't push it. He would just say, hey, is Randy Savage going to go in the Hall of Fame? Yes, okay, that's the end of it. Forget what happened, what might have happened, all of that. Let's just drop it, leave it there, not get into, questions that Vince probably, definitely would be a little uneasy with. So I can understand that. Because like I said, I didn't expect this to be anything all that newsworthy. I didn't expect this thing to be anything great. I think his answers about Cesaro were, just kind of show, we got the whole brass-wearing BS that I hate. I hate hearing. I know Steve Austin doesn't believe that. JR is probably the one guy out there that I often hear kind of, he talks about it, and I'm always kind of like, will you shut up about it? Because I don't think he's right. I think, the guys have tried, and, Punk is a perfect example. Daniel Bryan is an example. All these guys are examples of guys who, Zack Ryder, of all people. I mean, he did the very thing they tell you to do time and time again. Okay, go out and get yourself over. And he got himself over, even though, maybe he only got himself over and he would only ever be, a lower tier guy, or maybe even just Santino. But keep in mind, Santino was over, and Santino for an act fit, because you do need that comedy act. You do need that type of guy. You only need one of them. And when Santino left, Zack Ryder could have easily fit into that role, because you need that type of guy. And instead of trying to force people in there that don't naturally get forced into, or aren't naturally that type of guy. So I thought that was crazy. The whole talk about, the title is a prop, the whole, all of that, just normal BS stuff. I did like the fact that Austin did ask, when they were talking about Punk, and they were talking about, when Austin left, and Austin flat out told him, he said, JR's the one that got me to come back. You don't have a JR now. And I think that was very telling, because JR was, of course, the head of talent relations, and now the head of talent relations is Triple H. And I think it's very telling that, he, it's no secret that him and Triple H are, don't see eye to eye on things. So, you had that. So, overall, I thought everything was kind of fascinating. Like I said, I think everyone has probably talked about everything to such an extent that it's not even funny. And, but it was very, very, very interesting. And like I said, I think the more interesting thing will come at the next, shareholders conference call, when the questions are starting to ask, well, how much of what Punk said was true, because you can't really, You have to tell the truth on those things. And so it'll be very fascinating to hear what kind of happens. So we had all of that. We also had New Japan announce, which I think in my last video I talked about this. New Japan announced their own streaming site, which was New Japan World, which you can. It's New Japan World. It's NJPW World.com. If you go there, it'll all show up in Japanese. But if you have, a browser which will translate, it will easily translate into something that at least you can navigate. And they launched it, and it is awesome. It's going to basically be their version of the WWE Network. Every pay-per-view is going to be on the show. It's on the site. It's 999 yen, which comes out to just about right now $8.40, I think, or something, somewhere around there, depending on it's a monthly service. You sign up, you can do recurring, or all that sort of thing. If you look online, you can definitely find places to show you how to sign up. It's very easy. There's only probably one page that it doesn't translate that you kind of need to understand. Unlike signing up, I know a lot of people tried to sign up for Nico, which is where they used to do the iPay-per-views, and the credit cards wouldn't go through, but apparently that's not the case here. Apparently they were expecting, a lot of people outside of Japan, or at least people trying outside of Japan that wanted to make that part of it easy. But all the pay-per-views will be up there, starting with the Tokyo Dome, which it won't be the English version. It'll just be the Japanese version. So if you want English commentary, you have to buy the pay-per-view in the United States. The show that I believe it's either tomorrow night or Sunday night, there's a lot of shows this weekend, which is the end of the World Tag League Finals, which is kind of the tag version of the G1. It's usually not quite as good, and basically it does a lot of setup for the Tokyo Dome. Won't air live, I guess, because the deals were already done, but we'll air a couple hours afterwards on New Japan World. And then after that, it's going to be like, I think every month has like 6 to 8 live shows. That's pretty awesome. The actual New Japan TV show will be on there as well. It'll be about a month behind though, probably because of contract stuff. There's tons and tons of old footage. I mean, if you want to see just about every person you can imagine that has ever wrestled in New Japan, you kind of want to see them in a New Japan ring, go right ahead. Going back to 1973, I believe. Just lots of crazy stuff. If you like old stuff, there you go. And it looks like it's a really good deal. Now, the head of New Japan did state that there will be some sort of English service at some point. I wouldn't be shocked if at the English version of the Tokyo Dome show on January 4th, if somewhere during that show they announced that on January 5th, there's going to be, basically their version of the network will be launching in English. So that wouldn't shock me too much if that happened, because theoretically you would hope that would be the most eyes outside of Japan on your product, and so maybe you can get some people even outside of your normal thing, and you sell it and you do all that sort of thing. So that wouldn't shock me. It is a little different financial wise than what the network was, because pay-per-view in Japan isn't as strong as it is in the United States, and really in a lot of ways iPay-per-view is actually stronger in Japan than pay-per-view is. So, however, this isn't a whole deal where New Japan gets all the money from the network. They're splitting it with their TV partner. So they're not getting all that money, but it'll be interesting to see. They did say they were shocked with how many people outside of New Japan actually signed up, so we don't really have a number for that. So that'll be, maybe we'll get a number at some point, we'll kind of hear. But I would say if they're going to do an English version of New Japan World, that tells me they're going to have to come to the United States at least once a year, and more than just doing the random New Japan show or ROH show, which they are going to do. They announced, I think there's going to be 4 shows this coming year that they're going to do. So there is that. So anyways, So if that interests you, go ahead and sign up for it. Then you've got, we have 2 other pay-per-views going on. This, like I said, you have the New Japan Tag League Finals, which will be Goto and Shibata taking on Anderson and what's his name? Can't even think of his name. Of the Bullet Club. So there will be that. I would imagine Goto and Shibata will probably win, and then they'll probably win at the Tokyo Dome show and be the tag titles. That makes the most sense to me. That way you give Goto and Shibata something to do, particularly if you're not really going to do anything with Shibata, no matter, which is probably my one big gripe with New Japan booking. But anyways, so you have that. You've got actually the season finale of Chikara, which is interesting only because it's their season finale. It's 7 matches, and you're gonna get the Young Lions Cup thing with Heidi Lovelace and Missile Salt, and so there's that for those of you that like intergender matches. Then you've got a match that can only end in a German suplex, or after a German suplex. You've got Jimmy Jacobs versus Eddie Kingston. That should be pretty good. You got the Throwbacks versus Devastation Incorporation. That could be good. You have Loser Leaves Chikara match, which will be Ultra Magnus Pac versus Delirious. I wonder who will lose that. And then this is what kind of shocked me. They're actually doing a Cybernetico on this show. It's basically an 8-on-8 match where you tag kind of basically you have 8 guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And guy 1 can only tag in guy 2. Guy 2 can only tag in guy 3. Guy 3, and you go. And that's how you tag. And as guys get eliminated, and that's an elimination match on both sides, you fill in the blanks, and so that's the way. So it's not a traditional, 8-man tag type of thing. These matches are usually extremely long in Chikara. I think there was one that went well over an hour. Well over an hour. So it's kind of shocking to me that they put this on an iPay-per-view. So if you want to see something different, there's that. Now, also this week on Sunday, which has kind of gone unnoticed, Final Battle from ROH will be on pay-per-view, which kind of gone unnoticed, I think, because you just don't have, like, AJ Styles isn't on this show. The Young Bucks are, but AJ Styles isn't on this show. Your main event is Jay Briscoe versus Adam Cole, and I like both guys, and I think the match will be great. And it's a fight without honor, and it should be awesome. But it's not anything that's going to necessarily set the people on fire and get people excited about the show. You have Red Dragon versus the Time Splitters. That should be awesome. Jay Lethal versus Matt Sydal. That'll be interesting only because it could be really good, and it could just be kind of there. The Young Bucks and ACH versus The Addiction and Cedric Alexander. That could be really good. Michael Elgin versus Ciampa. That they've been building up for, pretty much all year. A lot of people thought that would be, kind of the main event for Final Battle before, all that stuff with Michael Elgin happened. You'll have Artie Evans taking on Moose to probably try to start a new streak. Roderick Strong taking on Adam Page. That could be, probably be okay. And then Jimmy Jacobs and Hanson, Jimmy Jacobs, Hanson, and Mark Briscoe and Caprice Coleman in a 4-corner survival match. That'll probably be fun. The show itself looks like it should be really good. It's just there's no hype for it, unfortunately. But I would imagine we'll probably get at least one, I would think, surprise on the show. So there's that. So it'll be interesting. Like I said, it'll be a very interesting week, I guess, or weekend. Not a week, but weekend for, everything. So, anyways. Oh, my neck is killing me. I've talked long enough. So anyways, I'll be back probably sometime next week to talk about at least some of the stuff I talked about on here as far as the show. So anyways, I'm out. Have a good one. Later.